Dr. Bisleen, welcome to Timeless Talks. I am firstly super nervous and super excited to have you. I've been following you for a while and your story is just beautiful. So please tell us a bit about yourself and how you ended up where you are now.
Yeah, so I am a naturopathic doctor. I'm also certified in cognitive behavioral therapy, and I have a private practice. I have a location in downtown Toronto, and I solely focus on, or try to at least, I focus on brain health in my practice. And
Yes.
it's been just incredible to just work in the mental health, brain health field, but to approach it from a different aspect. Because a lot of us, when it comes to brain health, mental health, we're so focused on the mindset, and we truly
Mm.
have forgotten just how much our body plays a role in how our mind
Yes.
feels. And that's what I really like to focus on, is really, broadening people's perspective on the mental health, brain health aspect, and teaching them that we need to make sure that the vessel that houses your brain is also healthy and feeling good. And
Mm.
for me, this is very personal. I share a lot about my story on
Yes.
socials, and I actually struggled with depression when I was in my teens and early 20s. Um, I was even on medication for a little bit. I was going to therapy and I was doing all of these things, but it wasn't until that I really dove in and started to support my body that things really, really quickly started to shift for me. And I just started to get better and better and better. And I was like, oh my God, I can wake up and feel excited about my life, and I can feel
Mm.
good about myself. And through it, I discovered naturopathic medicine. I was like, oh my God, this is a profession? Like, just all of these things. I was like, this is exactly what I want to do, because I knew I always wanted to be in medicine, but the field of psychiatry didn't
Yes.
always, it just wasn't my calling. I wanted to just really help people heal from the core and from the root. And yeah, that's what's led me to where I am today.
Yes, because I saw that your mental health journey started at very young. You mentioned in your late teens and early 20s. I mean, 16,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. 100%. It is. So, really what happened was that when I went to middle school, that's where things really started to shift for me. I got bullied when I was in middle school. And I just didn't have the skills to navigate any of that. And I didn't want to tell my parents about it. I have immigrant parents, and, they were really busy, and, making sure,
Mm.
we had the money and the house and all these things. And, um,
Yes.
I just really struggled by myself. But looking back, really, I look back and I'm like, I wish I just told someone about it, because that would have eased the pain. But as a
Yes.
child, you don't know, and you don't want to be a bigger burden to especially the people you love.
Yes, exactly.
And because I didn't really learn how to cope and whatnot, I went into high school, and my way of coping was overachieving. So, involving myself in everything, trying to be one of the popular kids, and being an all-star athlete, and doing all of these
Yes.
things, and still wasn't a good way to cope. And then it just got so bad at one point when I went to university with my depression that I actually ended up in the hospital as a result of it. And that's when it really shook me that if I don't do something about this, like, I'm going to end up here again, and this time I might not actually leave. So,
Yes.
yeah, it started very, very, yeah, the whole journey started pretty young. But in a way, I'm so grateful for that. And what's so interesting? I remember, like, when I was going through that time, I was like, I know I'm going to look back at this time and be grateful for it. It's hard to see that now. And I'm such a big believer in the hard things that you go through in life. There's always a reason for it. And if you're willing to grow and improve and be better, no matter how painful it is, usually
Yes.
on the other side, you can see, like, yep, I know why I needed to go through it. Because now when I'm with my patients and they're struggling with depression or anxiety, I can, like, be like, I feel that and I know that and I get you. And it's so
Mm.
difficult. And knowing too that there is that hope at the end of it too. And I can give them that hope because I've been through that journey myself.
I can imagine that because for me, to me, I'm a strong believer in I'm not going to come see, oh, go, come, I'm not going to come see someone if you haven't really gone through similar experiences, because to me, it's how can you understand what I'm going through, what I'm feeling,
Yeah.
if you are
Yeah.
basically just quoting me from a textbook that you did in university. And then
Yeah.
I can just imagine for you now, from at the age of 16, now being this overachieving mindset, that you actually at the end of the day just added so much more to your plate and so much more pressure and probably made so much more damage without really realizing it at the end of the day.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And it's so interesting that you bring that up because I've talked about this. Like I have a therapist that I see, and I've talked about it even in my therapy sessions, and it's very interesting, right? Because what happened for me when I went from middle school to high school is I completely transformed myself and changed myself. And when I did that, I was more accepted. So what was the mindset that formed within me is that I can't be
Mm,
myself. I always have to have this image I need to portray, or I need to, tune into other people to see what they want from me and have that image of myself so that
yes.
they like me. And that really became a foundation for a lot of the years that followed. So 100%, you're totally right. I thought that I was coping in the right way by putting my mindset in all these other places, but really I was damaging it more than I realized.
And thank God that you actually figured out or you solved it for yourself quite early on.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you realized this in university. What were you studying at the moment in university when you discovered well, how do you say naturopathic?
Naturopathic
Uh,
medicine. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I wasn't
What were you
yeah.
studying?
Yeah, I wasn't studying anything in psychology. I was
No way.
my major in university was biomedical science, and it was just so
Okay.
research focused, very much like looking at things at the cellular genetic level, and I absolutely hated it. Looking back, I really wish I did a major in like psychology instead because I feel like I would have loved that so much more. Yeah, I did not enjoy my major in undergrad at all, but I did always have a passion for learning about health, for science, and part of that stems from like
Mhm.
my parents as well. When I was, growing up in school, like my parents really started to shift into trying to be healthier. So, if we were going to have pizza, we're going
Okay.
to make pizza at home and have it whole wheat and put all these veggies on it and things like that. So health was, a big topic in my home. And so
Mm.
and I was also a very big into sports and playing sports. So I was constantly working out and running. And running is something too at a very young age that I took on as well. And to be honest, to this day, I say that running saved my life. Um, and so health was always a big part of my life. And as I was in university, just starting to experiment more and more with it. And really it was when I got to this point where I was just like, I'm going to therapy, I'm on medication, stuff isn't working. Like, I need to find some other ways to support myself. So I started researching different types of diets, and I did like the carnivore diet. I was vegan for a little bit. I did all these different diets. To this day, some of my friends will still be like, "Are you still vegan?" I'm like, "No, you guys, I stopped that years ago." Um, but I was just so into experimenting and trying different things, and I would constantly be working out, experimenting with my sleep, and just reading too is something that I always loved. Like as a kid, my dad, he would take me to the library, and I would come back like 8 years old with like 20 books in my hand, and he'd be like, "You have to put some away. You can't take all of these." But I'd be like, "No, I want them all," and I would literally read them all within a week. So I loved reading since I was very young. And when I got into like university and really my healing journey, I started just like reading as many health books, self-help books, and all of these things, and that really shifted a lot for me as well.
I mean, I believe I'm a firm believer, like I love reading as well. And I swear that it's because I grew up in a house where my mom loved to read. And I
Mm,
think it subconsciously rubbed off on me and my sister. And
yeah.
I mean, I remember us living in our library, our small town library. We would go there school holidays. They would have like puppet shows for us and storytelling. And that
I love
was,
that.
we spent our days there during school holidays from a very young age. And
Yeah.
I, I pray every day that I rub off on my kids. Like, the amount of books they have in their rooms. It's like, please just read. Because I think I read a study the other day that says just 6 minutes of reading before you go to bed can decrease stress with like 30%. It was like a ridiculous high percentage.
I'm gonna look at the study. Okay. It's amazing. I mean, I can totally see that. It's something I always tell my patients who I'm like, if you wake up with morning anxiety, go read. Go put your mind into like a positive place, right? Yeah, but reading is so phenomenal. And I always tell my patients who are parents is that whatever you want your kids to be, just show them. Instead of telling them, show them.
Lead
Like
by
just like how,
example.
for example, you're like you picked up like your mom would just read all the time. And you just naturally also wanted to just start reading.
It's true. And luckily, my fitness part comes from my dad. So he was the runner in the family. I'm not a great runner
Yeah.
to this day. I could only manage a decent run when it was with him. Funny enough, I would like
Amazing.
knock out a 10, 11 kilometers like that with him, but try and do it by
Yeah.
myself and I die. It's just funny
Yeah.
how I'm blessed that I got two of those special like coping healing mechanisms, reading and fitness from one of each of my parents, which
Parents.
I'm very happy about. Which actually
Oh,
brings us to what we're going to chat about today, grief and trauma,
yeah.
because I spoke to you a little bit about my story and my background, losing my dad very suddenly. And when I think back on it now, it's been 11 years. That period is a complete blur to me. It's like, which I
Wow.
guess is a normal thing. So I was wondering,
Mhm.
how does the brain process grief and trauma on a neurological level? And are there specific areas of the brain that's impacted during this time? Like, for example, the hippocampus, because I love that
Yeah.
word. So I wanted to throw it in there.
It's a fun one, eh?
Very.
Yeah. So yes, there's some like very real brain changes that happen at that neurological level. And it's quite fascinating here. So when we do look at the brain, there are some key areas. So number one is that we have an area called the amygdala. So the amygdala area of our brain is responsible for those like automatic reactions, right? So, maybe you're walking down the street and then your car almost like hits you, right? And you're all of a sudden just like, huh, just in that like, whoa, like, that mode of
Yes.
just like fear, scare, the automatic reaction, like you just had no control over, right? That's what the amygdala is responsible for. And what starts to happen in the amygdala is that this area of the brain in grief, it's more activated during grief. And in conjunction with the amygdala, there's also the area called the prefrontal cortex. This is like the front area of the brain. This is the area that becomes less active. This is the area of the brain that's responsible more for rational thinking and emotional regulation. And so, what can start to happen is that essentially this can lead to poor decision making. It can lead to more emotional dysregulation and difficulty controlling emotions, and also just having more of those like erratic, uncontrollable emotional reactions because of that heightened activity in the
Mhm.
amygdala. So, really, two really big areas affected. The hippocampus is also affected as well. So, this is that place where it's really crucial for forming memories, recalling memories, and this can become underactive when we are in those heightened states of stress, like grief. And really, that is the big part of grief that can cause these different areas of our brain to get altered. Is that when we do experience grief, our body releases more of that stress hormone cortisol. And when that stress hormone cortisol is released, it affects all different sorts and areas of our bodies. And so, going back to the hippocampus now, is that if the hippocampus is underactive, it can actually make it harder to create new memories or even recall past ones, which can sometimes cause a really distressing experience for people or confusing experience, especially maybe it's someone that close that they lost and now they can't remember things as well of their past, and that can cause a lot of hurt and pain, even just that.
Mm.
And then on top of that too is that sometimes we can have these very strong emotional memories as well, right, that can then trigger that grief response even more. So it kind of has that bit of like a dual effect. There
Mhm.
are other areas of the brain, like the insula, which is the area of the brain that's responsible for processing physical and emotional pain. It's been shown to be more active during grief. So, very, very real changes happen to our brain when we go through and experience grief, and different areas and parts of our brain actually become more or less activated. And what's even more interesting when we do look at grief is that, and even just trauma as well, is that repeated trauma, repeated reminders of the grief can actually rewire the brain and make it be more sensitive to future stress, which is very, very
Oh,
interesting.
gosh.
And then reminders of that loss can also just continuously trigger the stress response, which reinforces those neural pathways and can lead to that chronic stress as well long term. So it's wild how, like, again, when we repeatedly, when we repeatedly think a certain way, feel a certain way, it actually starts to become this like reinforced pattern in our brain.
Mm.
Yeah. And then grief, depending on, how long it lasts and how much those same neural connections and pathways are fired, it can actually reinforce new pathways that are more emotional and fear-based.
I always joke with my sister and say, like, I have this thing where, now you can tell me if it's normal. Because my parents got divorced when I was very young. I was 8, I think, 9.
Yeah.
And I cannot remember anything negative that has happened in my childhood. It's like there's a block in my brain. Like anything
Wow.
bad, like the divorce is a blur to me, where my sister who's younger than me can remember
Yeah.
specific details. It's like she's zoned
Wow.
in on all the sad and negative almost
Yeah.
things that happen in our lives, where I'm like,
Yeah.
I just completely block it out.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's super wild, and that can be for a number of reasons. Sometimes it can be because, our brain loves us, even though we don't want to believe that always. Our brain and our mind love us, right? Even though it doesn't seem like it. But, that could be a way of your brain just protecting you, right? Of just not
Okay.
wanting to go back to that experience and whatnot. But the other thing too we have to understand as well is that, two young kids can live in the same household and have completely different experiences as
True.
well, right? And completely different perceptions of things as well. Even the difference in age can make a difference with that as well, and in terms of
Okay.
how impressionable we are versus not as well. So many different things can be playing a role with that aspect.
That's a bit scary because now I'm like, oh my goodness, do I want to open that vault and see what comes out of there? Like, will I be able to come back from that? That's
Yeah.
a bit of a scary thought, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And for sure it is. And I always say, before you venture off into past memories, making sure you are in a place in your life. There's never going to be a perfect time where you're like, I'm ready to open the can of
yes.
worms of my past, but making sure you are in a place where you don't have tons of additional stress and things like that, because it's true. It definitely can cause a lot to unleash. But, I, in my own practice, I work with a lot of people who are like high achievers and they want to get to that next level of success. And something I do notice is when we haven't fully worked through things from our past, your body stores everything. Your body holds on to everything. And
Yes.
sometimes when I find people, if you ever find yourself stuck in these cycles where you're repeating the same patterns, you're stuck in the same thing over and over again, first thing I always ask my patients to think about is like, what do we need to help you let go of from the past? Because you're clearly keeping yourself stuck in
Mm.
in a certain place.
Yes. No, that makes 100% sense. Tell me, in your professional opinion, how does grief and trauma manifest differently in terms of short and long-term memory? Because obviously grief
Yeah.
and trauma has different stages of dealing with it. And can the
Yes.
brain actually heal from that?
Hmm. Yes to that. So I'll get into, I guess, the healing and what that actually looks like. But a lot
Okay.
of the short term changes kind of goes back to the areas of the brain that are affected, that are going to cause those short term changes, right? So because the amygdala is going to be affected, we have that heightened fear and emotional reactivity response.
Mm.
Because the prefrontal cortex kind of shuts down a bit more, you're going to have difficulty thinking clearly, and it's going to be harder for you to make decisions, and you might be a bit more impulsive. Because the hippocampus is affected, you might have trouble with memory formation, and just recalling memories. So, and then also just that increase in that cortisol hormone can cause that initial,
Mm.
short-term alertness, and also affect your immune system as well. So those are kind of the short-term changes based on what's actually kind of happening in the brain. And then long-term, what can start to happen is if you don't get the right help and support from it, over time, you're going to have, a decreased ability to handle stress, to really regulate your emotions. You might have this constant, emotional dysregulation just happening where you feel like very reactive to things. Long term, too, it can also
Yes.
alter your neurotransmitter levels. So, your serotonin, happiness hormone, dopamine, which is a reward hormone, can also be altered. Yeah, for sure, long term. Because with grief, of course, there's going to be that short term alteration, right?
Yes.
But grief over time, if it's not worked through in an appropriate way or supported, like it for sure can lead to depression and anxiety and things like that long term if you don't get that help and support. Um, And then you can also long term find yourself kind of stuck in that constant rumination or negative thought loop and emotional pain. Because again, grief literally rewires the brain, right? If you reinforce those pathways over and over and over again.
Yes.
And if you don't get help and support, then these new pathways become your normal pathways of living and being. Yeah.
When we say long term, like how is long term? Like 2 years, 10 years? How long can
Yeah.
it show up? Oh,
It's so difficult to put a number on that because there isn't really a number in terms of like how long it takes to really heal and recover from grief, right? And loss. It's
yes.
so dependent on how close were you to that person? What was your relationship with them? How much
Mm.
of a part were they of your life, right? And I think also it's so dependent on like you as a person, how emotionally resilient you are, where what was your mental state and well-being at that time and period in your life when you lost that person? What supports you have? It's just so dependent on so many things, right? So it's really hard to put
Yes.
that number on it. But also it's not to say too, if you find yourself, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh my God, I've been stuck in that same pattern for like years and years and years.
Yes.
It doesn't have to take you 10 more years to like really break out of it. I think the big thing is just having the
Okay.
awareness and understanding that your brain can change. And this gets into that next thing of like, can we really heal from these experiences? I do you know Dr. Julie? She's a psychologist, really big
Yes.
online.
I
She's so
know.
wonderful at having
Follow
like
her.
what do you call it? She does like these, what's the best way to describe it? She does these like diagrams or like really brings
Yes,
like
like
takes
visual
psychology
examples,
visual.
like the
Exactly.
fishbowl and the red dot.
She does such a beautiful job of that. And she actually created this drawing, and I was like, this just represents grief and healing from grief in such a beautiful way. And she essentially took like a blank piece of paper and she drew like a black circle in the middle of the blank piece of paper. And that essentially
Yes.
represented grief. And then outside of that black circle, what she did is that she took different paint colors, so they were like red and green and yellow, and she drew circles around the black circle with those different colors. And that circle, of course, got bigger and
Mm.
bigger and bigger, and eventually the whole page was filled with all the beautiful colors, but there was still that black hole in the middle. And I thought it just represented it so well because you know it doesn't ever go away, but just your ability to handle it, to work through it, to just build a new life around it, you just get better and better at it as more time goes by. But that little grief, that little pain is it's always gonna be there. And I think that can be
Will
really
never go
hard for
away.
people to, it won't ever go away. And I mean, like, how can it? Especially when you lose,
Mm.
like, like a primary caregiver, like a parent. How can that grief ever fully go away? Especially depending on what your relationship was with them. But what happens is that you learn to live your life with it there, and it gets easier
Mm.
and easier and easier over time. And I think what's important to understand is that our brains truly are neuroplastic and they can change. And it's important to remember that, this initial grief period that you might go through, like it's going to be hard and difficult, but it's that pain is not doesn't have to be at that intensity your whole life. If you learn to really
Yes.
work through it and get some really supportive strategies with it. But for sure, our brain can change just as much as our brain can change as soon as we experience that initial grief. We can also start to reinforce other stronger, more helpful neural pathways as well.
Mm. It's someone actually explained to me it as well, grief as it's this, you imagine you've got a rock in your pocket and it's there, you can feel it, it's always there, but eventually you get used to it. And even though it's heavy and it's slowing you down and dragging, you eventually get stronger and you learn to live with it there in the pocket. And every now and then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, it's still there. And then you go on with it and just continue living with it. And it's funny because it was 11 years this year for me. And I don't know if the 10-year mark was like a significant number last year, but it was like, and I must say, the last 4 years, I have been really focused on working on my mental health and getting better and healing. But last year, it was like this revelation, like this
Yeah.
light. I don't know. It was like this. I think I'm going to be okay. And that everything, like you said, I'm a firm believer of everything happens for a reason, although we never know why. but we'll find that out one day. But
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
like you said, I I just realized like, okay, I think I've healed, if you can call it healing. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's still there, and I still miss him terribly.
Of
But
course.
I also have my own life now to focus on. I can't let that also completely consume me at the end of the day,
Yeah.
because that's not healthy for
Yeah.
me or my kids or my husband.
Yeah. 100%. And that's exactly it, right? I think it's so important to process, to feel, to understand it's going to come in like waves, right? Like
Yes.
5 years down the road after that incident, you could have these like big huge waves of grief, and
Mm,
that's okay. It's learning how to really give yourself permission to be with the feelings, but to not give those feelings permission to take over your whole life. Now, of course, that's
exactly.
going to be a bit different depending on how recently something happened, right? I think that advice goes out the window when it's been something very recent, something
Yes.
very big. But I think over time, that's really the advice to employ, is to like give yourself permission to process the feelings without letting the feelings dictate your whole life, because that can very quickly start to happen too.
Yes, 100%. Now, grief focuses on everyone is, especially when it comes to grief and trauma, they focus on the psychological and emotional effects that it has on you. So, what are some, and I'm asking this because I'm pretty sure I've experienced it. What's the physical manifestations that show up that we don't immediately like link to, okay, this is now linked to my grief or my trauma? What are some
Yeah.
of those that can come up and pop up during this period?
Yeah, so honestly, so many. And really, again, what it goes down to is that when we do experience grief, your body immediately goes into that sympathetic stress, like survival state, pretty much. And your body is shooting out larger amounts of cortisol, which is your stress hormone. And when your body shoots out large amounts of cortisol, and when you're in that stress state, it's gonna impact and affect everything in your body. So many different things. So one, your energy, right? You could experience a lot of like tiredness or
Hmm.
exhaustion. You can have a lot of muscle tension and body aches and pains, right? So you're thinking like the neck, the jaw, the shoulders. There's a lot of just like
Okay.
tightness happening because again, your body's in that
Yes.
sympathetic state. You're constricting. And then lots of digestive issues, very common, right? So bloating, nausea,
Mm.
because that gut brain axis is now disrupted. And you could also have changes in appetite too, right? Some people, when they have high levels of cortisol, they have complete suppression of their appetite and they don't feel like eating. Other people can like want to emotionally and overeat as a way to cope with their emotions. Because of the high cortisol, your immune system will definitely feel the impact of that. So you might get sick more easily or have a lot of colds. Sleep disturbances is very common as well. So you might have trouble falling asleep, staying asleep. You might experience things like nightmares or really vivid dreams. Um, it can even affect your hormones as well, right? So with women, they
Yes.
can have irregular periods or their PMS symptoms might worsen a lot for the couple of months following that sort of grief. Your skin can be affected, right? So you can have eczema, acne, just skin flare ups showing up. So lots of different, like, can you relate to that, the skin being affected?
Yes. So I was actually on the contraceptive pill for, I mean, I feel like
Okay.
our generation of parents, the moment you're a teenager, the moment that first pimple appears, the first thing they did was, let's put you on the contraceptive. That's just what all the doctors did. So I was on
Yes.
the contraceptive for years, probably for about
Mm,
12 years by the time that my father passed away. Then it was about
yeah.
6 months after his passing. And I started because I had bad skin. Like I'll share pictures on social media one day when I have the courage. But when I show it to people, they
Yeah.
look at me and they're like, no way that is you. When I say like acne,
Wow.
like, those cystic acnes that was like purple and scarred and
Yeah.
obviously being on the contraceptive, it took it away. So I had beautiful clear skin.
Yeah.
It was perfect. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden I started getting these tiny breakouts, but it wasn't my normal acne. It was like tiny, when you just touch your skin and you're like, oh, it feels so rough and bumpy. So I was like,
Yes.
I
Yes.
think, but I immediately linked it. I was like, okay, I don't think, because I've always, touch wood, been very aware of my body and what it's
Yeah.
saying to me or trying to say to me. And I was like, okay, I think it's linked with all the stress that it's almost counteracted with my contraceptive pill now. So I was like, I'm just going to stop it. I shouldn't have just gone
Yeah.
cold turkey. Maybe I should have probably talked to my doctor. But anyway, so I did that.
Yeah.
And then the funny thing is, all of a sudden, like 2 days after stopping it, I started getting these rashes. But
Mm.
it only appeared, it was very strange. We finally figured out, the dermatologist and I, that it is. We think it is, what do you call the things that's in wine? Now I've went blank. No, not pesticides. Um, Preservatives. So
Preservatives.
every time I would drink wine, like, come on, I would drink wine, or we were in a restaurant, I had a glass of water with a slice of lemon in it. And obviously there was
Wow.
preservatives on the fruits and the veggies. I took 2 sips of the water. Like 5 minutes later, my husband looked at me. He's like, "What is up with your face?" And it just went. And that's what I went through for about 4 months. And I
Yeah.
was on like an antihistamine, and I couldn't drink or eat anything because it would happen with any fruit that I take from the shops. And eventually
Wow.
it just disappeared.
And it just disappeared eventually.
Crazy.
Wow. That's wild. Did you have any other like gut symptoms during that time at all?
You know what? I've spoken to my nutritionist about this. I remember having gut issues from a very young age, like
Mm.
very, very young, from like 10. But maybe that can be divorce related now that you mention it.
100%. All the time, anxiety in young kids comes out as digestive issues. Huge, 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 huge. And to be honest with you, that's those digestive issues then probably set up the pathway for hormones to be disrupted and also for your skin stuff. Huge link between skin and gut as well.
Crap. Because it's like all in a row, like 10 digestive issues. So I'm trying to think, it was just before I started my period, I remember. It was about 11, 12. And then
Yeah.
digestive issues. Then the skin started with the period that started. And it was like this
Yeah.
snowball effect of everything happening.
Yeah. And it makes so much sense now. The stress of that digestive issues led to hormones being dysfunctional, and then that led to like the skin stuff as well. Because
Why
if
am I
your
getting
gut, so I
emotional
always
about
think that,
that? It's like a little brain. Whew,
yeah.
crazy.
What emotions is it like bringing up for you right now?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Crazy. Sorry.
Mm. No, please don't apologize. I think that there's definitely stuff still worth exploring.
Yes. But I told you I don't want to open that can of worms.
But maybe that can of worms is exactly what needs to be opened.
I think you are 100% right. We'll maybe talk after this episode a little bit more. Whew,
Yeah,
jeez.
100%.
Crying over the digestive issues, constipation, great, Juliet.
Yeah. It's
Crazy.
wild too, right? I think when we start to make connections in our mind too, that on its own can just bring stuff up.
And I think that's what it was now that triggered me. It was like a little, obviously, I've always been focused on his death. Like, I mean, the divorce happened years ago. So, but when you mentioned digestive issues, and I didn't link it when I spoke to my nutritionist, but when you said that, I didn't, obviously, I think the divorce was so long ago to me, it's not trauma anymore. It's like, it was part of my
100%.
life. It was
Yeah.
just,
Yeah. Yeah.
you live with
But
it.
it's so interesting too is because so in my practice, aside from also supporting people with their body, I also do a lot of limiting beliefs work as well. Because before I tell my patients like eat, have this diet, take these supplements, da da da, da, I always
Yes,
talk to them about like, what's your identity, how do you view yourself, what are your limits about yourself and what you deserve in life and things like that. Because if I don't address those things, and it's people keep coming back and they're not able to stick with the
yes,
actual strategies, right? Because their identity, their vision of themselves doesn't align with that. And it's just, when we go through things at such a young age as an adult, it feels like you've moved through it and moved past it and it's part of the past. But it's so interesting because I would wonder is at that time and age is like what you were going through is how did that form your identity and who you believe yourself to be? And how is that potentially still showing up today
Mm.
for you as an adult?
That sounds like it's gonna go deep if I have to now go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's gonna be
It's
scary, and now I want to open the can of worms. Damn, Dr. Bisleen, why are you doing
yeah.
this to me?
It's terrifying, but honestly, I'm such a big believer in that. I love helping people truly step into their potential. And I remember when I was going through my depression, one of the reasons that I wanted to overcome it was I was like, I have these big goals and dreams. I want to build this amazing, big, bold life, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean I want to make $1 million and whatever, but I want to live my
Yes,
life to the absolute fullest. And if we have limits that we're constantly putting in ourselves internally, or if our body isn't feeling our best and we're waking up feeling slow, sluggish, or just not our best, then it's just like, it's so hard to fulfill that. And I think it's so sad when we can't step into our full potential and see really how far can we just take ourselves in this life and make it almost be this like
yes.
fun game, like how much can I up level myself, how much can I create and build, and all of that starts with first giving ourselves permission to fully step into our potential, to fully optimize our brain and our body. And when we do that, it just opens a door with everything else.
I keep telling everyone that I trust. Well, now I've learned to open up about it a bit more, but I've got this feeling, and I've got this feeling inside me, and it's like I'm in this like this block of, I can't explain it, but I've got this feeling that I'm meant for amazing great things. I can't explain. It's like this fire inside me, and I just wanted to like, it's like a dragon breathing fire, but it's just like I haven't found my
Oh,
breath yet.
yeah. Oh my God. First of all, I love that visual. I got
Mm.
literally goosebumps as you're telling that. But that's exactly what I mean, right? Like
Yes,
you have this like dragon just within you, just ready to unleash, but it's like it's caged.
yes,
It's caged, right? And that's what I describe it as. It's like caged when we put these like limits on ourselves or when we're not fully in our potential. And when we finally open the doorway to that, it's like all that wildness within can release and build something so big, so beautiful, so amazing when we just finally get out of our own way, when we finally start to feel good
yes.
in our mind and body. Yeah.
Mm. Explain to me how our coping mechanisms, like avoidance and dissociation, which I have now obviously realized I've been doing quite a bit, might affect the brain's
Yeah.
response during trauma and grief. And do you have any healthy coping strategies that you give to your
Yeah.
patients?
Yeah, 100%. So, first of all, I just wanted to normalize that those are very, very normal reactions to have. It can be very easy to get hard on ourselves if we're avoiding or disassociating, being like, what is wrong with me? Like, why can't I just be with this?
Yes.
Like, grief, and again, depending on the person that you've lost, the relationship that you have with them, and how intense that grief is, your body goes immediately into that stress state, and it's very, very big, difficult emotions. So it's very natural for your brain and body to want to completely avoid them or just disconnect and disassociate from them. So very normal
Okay.
response to have. Now, of course, if you stay in these states for too long, they're not going to be helpful for your long-term healing, right? So
Okay.
avoidance, where you're just trying to avoid those feelings, so you might be distracting yourself from it. And what you're essentially doing is you're suppressing the emotional processing, right? And you're really preventing the integration of giving yourself permission to integrate to this new experience, and it's going to prolong that stress phase even more, right?
Okay.
And it's going to keep you actually more stuck in that survival brain mode instead of giving your prefrontal cortex a chance to actually process and work through your emotions. And instead, it's going to keep you in that
Okay.
heightened state of emotion with the amygdala constantly responding.
Mm.
Now, disassociation is when you just completely like disconnect, right? Like this is when you might notice yourself, you
Yes.
just like zone out. Essentially, that's what it
Mm.
looks like. And this is when your brain is literally and mind is disconnecting from really specifically your body, the experience that you're having, right? And so what can start to happen too is that if disassociation becomes this response that you constantly turn towards, it's going to become a habit for you, and it's going to be harder for you to connect with reality and your emotions. And this is not even just going to be related to grief, it's going to be related to everything in your life, right? So being able to be present, be in the moment, form new memories and things like that is going to be very difficult to do. So normal
Mm-hmm.
responses and reactions, but very important. If you find yourself constantly stuck in it and you don't know how to get out of it, you got to get help and support. And in general, and I'll go over better strategies, I always recommend people, like, if you're going through grief, that is like right away, go see a therapist, like right away. Go talk to someone about it, like right
Yes.
away. More than just like friends and family, you need to get professional support with this, especially if it is someone that it has been very, very close to you. It's
Mm.
very, very difficult to work through grief on your own. And just how I described before is that if you don't work through it in a healthy way, you're going to be reinforcing negative thought patterns, negative thought loops, and ruminations in your mind over and over again. So it's very important that you get
Okay.
that help and support so that you don't stay stuck in that position for a long time.
Yes.
And with that being said, so what are some better strategies to really help you work through it? So definitely. So when you think about, again, grief, we're in that sympathetic stress state mode. So you really want to try to do activities that help to activate the parasympathetic nervous system response. One thing I do
Okay.
want to add in, actually, before I get into the strategies, is it's very important that you let yourself feel, right? Like, if you lost someone yesterday, I don't really think today would be the right day to start doing any of these things. You really need to
No.
give yourself a period to feel. And that feeling doesn't stop just because it's been a month or two. You're going to have waves where you
Mm.
need to feel, but I think it's very important that you give yourself permission to feel, and then you can do the strategies to get yourself out of the state. You don't want to jump to the
Okay.
strategies too early on because you're not giving your body and space time to feel. Instead, you're just going to be suppressing them. And sometimes these healthy
Mm.
strategies can become a way of distracting yourself instead of just feeling it too. So
Okay.
be extremely mindful of that. Okay.
Yes.
Actually, I don't know what I'm telling you as if you're going through right now, but it's just, but yeah, just be mindful of this to whoever is listening. Yeah,
Yes. It's
mindfulness
fine.
breath is really helpful. Cognitive behavioral therapy, EMDR, somatic therapy. Somatic therapy really helps you kind of get into your body more and connect with your body,
Okay.
which can be great for feeling, especially if you're someone that dissociates. Somatic therapy can be a beautiful way for you to just get into your body. EMDR is really fantastic. It uses like rapid eye movements to help process emotions
I
and
would
decrease.
love to try that.
Yeah, honestly, EMDR is fascinating. I've done a session or two before, and it's fascinating just to go back to like memories and just reduce the emotional intensity around them and work through it. It's fascinating. Other things like journaling or expressive writing can be really great. Right now, you're starting to engage that prefrontal cortex and actually work through some of these feelings. Movement, taking care of your health in that way, right? The consistent sleep, nutrition, hydration, which again can be very difficult if the grief is very, very recent. But you do, if you feel
Mm.
like you haven't been good at it yourself, getting help and support, getting someone to keep you accountable. Maybe a friend can check in and make sure you've eaten breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or going on a walk with a friend, or things like that, because taking care of your health is going to be very crucial. And then, of course, social connections during this time, right? And making sure you have a really supportive network that can help you like work through and just be with you, right? Even if they have nothing to say, just people to be around becomes very important as well.
Yes. Yes. Because I remember
Yeah.
you almost go into this cave, you crawl into this cave and you never want to come out again. And
Yeah.
the I luckily had very good friends that lived right next to us, and he actually had went through exactly the same thing. He lost his father years before, so he was very adamant, him and his wife, to like come over constantly, check on
Oh,
me. Even on days where I didn't want to see anyone, they will just sit there. And it's true, you need that little support system around you, because I would either
yeah.
crawl into my hole, or I would be the one that would always look after everyone. I would phone all I'll check on
Yeah.
my sister, like avoiding
Yes.
my own feelings to keep checking on everyone else, all the family. How are you coping? Are you okay? Can I do something for you?
Yeah.
And need those people to just like bring you back to earth and be like, Juliet, focus, just
Yes.
process and
Yeah.
deal and cope and just talk.
Yeah. 100%. And I think it's so important too. Like it's really nice in a way that you had someone in your life that experienced a loss of a parent, because they could relate to it and they know the pain of it and they know how to support you
Yes.
because they went through it and know the importance of frequent checkups. And I think it's so important that if you feel like, you've gone through grief or are going through grief, and people aren't supporting you in that way. I think it's so important to understand too that not everybody understands grief, especially if, if someone hasn't had as big of a loss of like a parent, or, other really close people to them that they've lost. They might not always understand. So I think it's so important too, to not shy away or be afraid to let people know the type of help and support you need. Because again, we just
Mm,
assume that people should automatically check on us and know, like, I lost a parent and this was a big loss and everybody should know to like check on me every single day and da 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 da. But it's just like people truly don't understand always, and it's not their fault. And don't think that your friends don't like you, your family doesn't like you, or whatever. And I think
yes.
it's so important to express to them, like, this was a very big loss for me. And I would just love it if you just shot me a text like once a day to check in on me. Or I would love it if you just, stop by once this week just to see how I'm doing, because it's really, really
Mm,
hard for me. So not being afraid to say that, because if someone truly hasn't experienced that level of loss and grief as you, it's going to be very difficult for them to understand the pain of that.
I know, it's very true. And I remember about 2 months after his passing, I got almost, you got this, I don't know if it was the anger part of the grief, but you were like, people aren't checking in on me anymore. It's like, oh, they forgot me. They were like, don't they understand what I'm going through? And at that time, I really wish that I was more expressive, because I don't know, um, after my dad's death, something did ignite in me. Like I found my voice and I'm more like open and talking and not afraid to speak my mind anymore. Um,
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit too harsh at some point, people will tell me, but now I don't mind. I'm not afraid to be like, listen, yeah, I need a
Yes.
psychology session now. I need my coaching session now. I'm going through something, like I need to talk. And I wish I did that
Yeah.
10 years ago.
100%. And I think it's, again, right? It's like, and that's a big thing too, is people don't realize, is if you're not expressing anything and it's been a couple of months now, like, people eventually they do stop checking in because they don't know anything is
Yes.
wrong. And, I remember, one of my friends, she lost her brother a couple of years ago. And a couple of months after, I would still just like keep checking in on her, and I would have these conversations of just like, I know that it feels like people move on and whatnot, but like, we're here for you and I'm here to support you, even though it has been a few months, because I know grief doesn't just go away like that, especially when it's someone
Yes.
so close to you. So yeah, unless someone has been through it and unless you're actively expressing that you are sad, people can't read your mind, and it's so important to reach out. Yeah.
No, that's 100% true. So, what role does neuroplasticity, and to me, I link it to now to like the brain is like a muscle, so you have to train it, and the
Yeah.
brain's ability to reorganize itself play in overcoming grief and trauma. Plus, how can we
Yes.
actively support brain health? Obviously, you've got a lot of tips that you always give people on your page, which is
Yes.
incredible, and I love them. Um, but what are those things?
Yeah. So, first of all, for sure, like, neuroplasticity, it's literally your brain's ability to rewire itself, right? Like, build new connections, new pathways. It can happen at any stage of life that you're at. They even show that people in their 70s and 80s, you can rewire your brain at that age. So your brain is constantly building new
Wow.
connections and pathways. And just like how I described before, is that your brain can rebuild this new pathway around a grief and
Mm,
trauma and be stuck in that negative loop. It can also come out of this pathway and build an even stronger pathway, right? So, and I think it's so important that that's the outlook that you have on it. And I think it's important too that
yes.
although, yes, your brain can rewire its pathways and end up being stuck in that state of negativity, don't, to whoever's listening, like, don't let that freak you out in terms of, I can't feel my emotions because then my brain's going to be stuck in this phase. That's not how it works. And it does take some time. So feeling your emotions is not going to cause your
Mm,
brain to cause you to be stuck in that state, right? That's only if you just live in that emotion for like years and years and years, right? And so I think what's important to understand is that your brain can change, and it's about practicing that, right? And practicing that shift towards safety, calm, and connection.
okay.
And so, similar to some of the strategies that I described before, so a lot of, nervous system regulation stuff.
Yes.
And really, it's the repetition and consistency that's going to be very, very important. Like, maybe setting aside 10, 15 minutes every single day to meditate, to do some journaling, making sure, maybe once a week or maybe once every couple of weeks, you're checking in with your therapist and talking about it. And you're really prioritizing your nutrition, your sleep, your movement, and you have that really, great network of people you can connect with,
Mm.
and that you're regularly expressing and feeling your emotions. And really that's the process of working through it. Yeah.
Yes, because like I said, the brain, I see it, it is a muscle. So basically, you can teach your brain, it's like teaching your brain new habits that you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And
That's exactly it.
and the only way you can form a new habit is doing it and repeating it every single day over and over until it becomes a habit. Like
Yeah.
brushing your teeth every
And
single day, it's a habit. So you subconsciously, you just eventually you just do it because it's part of you.
yes.
We
Yeah.
touched a little bit on stress and the cortisol and how it can affect your brain. But how big a effect does it have on the brain, stress? Because in today's society,
Yeah.
after COVID, I think stress levels are, I think people are still recovering from COVID stress levels.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. For sure. I mean, our economy hasn't recovered. People haven't recovered. We're still feeling the impacts and effects of COVID everywhere. I don't really have like a percentage number in terms of how much it really affects our brain. I mean, maybe there is a percentage number out there. Or just, how much our cortisol really increases. I think again too, it's so dependent on your attachment to the person, how close they were to you, right? All of these things
Okay.
can affect that stress response. Even just your baseline of handling stress, right?
Okay.
So if you've, for example, lost a parent and then this is the second parent now you're losing, maybe the cortisol is a little bit different because you've been through that type of loss
Mm,
before, right? So all of those
true.
things can make a difference and affect in terms of how much of a heightened cortisol response you have, right? People who have been through harder things in life, you do build your tolerance to handle stress versus someone who
Yes.
hasn't really been through really big hard things and now they're going through this massive loss. Their stress response is most likely going to be way more heightened than someone else.
Okay. So moving away
Yeah.
a bit from this very somber grief and trauma
Yeah.
topic, is it possible to improve your intelligence or brain power? Like, if there's
Yeah.
one thing you can teach everyone, like to achieve that maximum brain power, what would that be?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, as much as I'm like a naturopathic doctor and I talk about body stuff all the time, I equally try to talk a lot about mindset stuff too because they both play a role. Honestly, it's your self-talk. Seriously, like your self-talk is seriously like everything. It's so, so powerful,
Yes.
so powerful. And constantly all day long in my practice, I'm catching people and telling my patients, like, don't say that by yourself. No, no, no. We don't tell ourselves we're not capable or I
Mm,
can't or this is hard or da 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 da. Because the way that you speak to yourself truly determines the way that you show up in the world. And, that's probably why I got a certification in cognitive behavioral therapy because it's all about adjusting our thoughts. Because yeah. And if there's one thing you want to start working through is the self-talk, right? So, like going back to the topic of grief, if you tell yourself, I can't recover from this, I'll never get better from this. I'll never be able to
yes.
I'll never get through this. And I know that originally those can be the feelings and thoughts that come up, especially when it's someone so close to you. Like if you lose a spouse or again, a parent or someone really, really close to you, it can literally feel like moving forward feels impossible.
Mm,
But again, the more that you repeat these things to yourself, the more you're heightening that emotional response. And more importantly than that, you're going to start showing up in life in that way. Because whatever you speak, if
okay.
you show up as that version of yourself, you've now made that a reality.
True. You are what you speak, basically. Like I'm very careful
So,
with what I say and put into the universe. When something negative pops out, I'm very quickly to suck it back in. Like, take it back.
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Because
100%. I
even with
teach,
my kids,
yeah.
it's
Sorry,
like
go
I'm
ahead.
so careful with what I say around them, especially society is putting so much pressure on us already. So I'm like, I'm not feeling good today. I'll make sure that they don't know that I'm not feeling good today because they don't need to, they don't need my bad habits to take them into their preteen and
Yeah.
teen years and then adulthood.
Yeah. Yeah. But actually, sometimes I actually encourage parents as to sometimes if you're not feeling well to share that with your kids and then share what you're going to do about it too. Because what can happen too is that if we never allow our kids to know that we experience bad emotions, and sometimes they can become adults who are just like, we shouldn't feel sad or angry. Da, da. Again, I don't know the full extent to stuff
Yes,
what's happening in your house now. I'm just generally saying stuff. But I think sometimes it can be good to actually allow kids to be like, mom's feeling a little sad today and I'm going to go on a walk because I'm feeling a little bit sad and going on this walk is going to really help me. And then coming back from the walk and being like, yeah,
yes,
that walk really helped me. I feel better from that. And it even gives them tools and strategies to help them work through their emotions. Because then they can be like, oh, like I'm feeling sad. Oh, mom went on a walk when she was sad. Maybe I should do that. Or she's reading, you know?
yes. No, that's true. And I must say, I was focusing more on like oh, I woke up feeling bloated and fat today. My pants are too tight. So that stuff I try and avoid to say because
Yes.
especially my daughter, she doesn't need to like talk bad about her body at this age. Even my son actually,
Yes.
because it affects boys and girls. But I did have the other day, I was just having such a shit, excuse my French, day. And I was sitting, I think I did a meditation or a class, online class. I just wanted to move. And I just broke down in tears on the mat. I was lying there in the room, like crying. And my son walked in and he was like, you could see his eyes was just like plates, biggest plates. And he was like, oh, what's wrong, mommy? And I told him, you know what? I'm having a emotional moment and it's okay. I'm crying. I'm letting my emotions out. And he and my daughter came to sit with me and they just held me. And I was like, oh, this is so sweet. And I just explained to them that it's okay to feel off. It's okay to cry. I'm not angry with anyone. I'm processing my own emotions. And they were fine. And then I felt better like 10 minutes later. And they were like, are you okay now, mommy? Are you fine? And then the moment I
Oh,
said yes, he looked up at me and his lips started shaking and tears started forming in his eyes. And I want to cry again. And and I told him, I said, okay, you carried me now. Now you can let it out. And he just started sobbing. And then I was just like, oh my God, that's so sweet. So he stayed strong for me in that moment. And then he was like, okay, you're okay. And then he was like, okay, now it's my turn to let it out. And my daughter, everything
God.
her brother does, she does. So she started sobbing as well. So then I was sitting there with the two of them sobbing in my lap. So I was like, that is
Oh,
such a sweet, it's like a learning moment for them, I say. And
yeah.
I mean, I constantly tell my husband as well, if you want to cry, cry in front of them, please, because I need our son to know that men can also cry and have emotions. So important.
Yes. Oh, I love it. And again, what a beautiful learning moment, for them to
Yes,
just be like, it's okay for us to cry. And I love that it's just like you and when we cry, the family comes together to support each other. And it just so
yes.
beautiful. And it's wonderful how we can take these moments and that can be like a beautiful teaching opportunity. And how nice of them to just come support you too, which is awesome.
I know. I've got my kids, I don't know how I've been so blessed with them, but they are like, if someone is sick, they'll go to you and say, are you feeling better? How are you feeling? I fell the other day, very clumsy me. I always fall. My daughter got that from me. And I hurt my foot. And the next morning, my daughter, the first thing she told me, how's your foot feeling, mommy? I was like, oh man, you're so cute. You're 4 years old and you're like so concerned for other people's like well-being and pain. It's so cute. Very cute. Now, that actually brings me to what is there a very big difference in male and female brain? Like,
Mhm.
like how they work and emotional processing and all of that.
Yeah, huge difference. There's actually a book called The Male Brain, a book called The Female Brain. I just actually finished reading the Female Brain book, and it is fascinating. I think every man should read the women's book, and every woman should read the man's book. And then also read your own book too, because I think it's important for you to know your own brain. But
Yes.
yeah, there's some very, very real big changes and differences in men and women's brains. So one, women tend to have a bigger prefrontal cortex. So this is a front area of the area of the brain that's responsible for emotional reasoning, processing emotions, things like that.
Oh,
Versus men have a bigger amygdala, so the area of the brain that's responsible for those automatic reactions. So this is why men tend to have more of those automatic reactions versus women are just
okay.
thinking a lot about things. Women's brains too are really designed for social interactions and for social connections, which is very, very
Really?
fascinating. And Men and women's brains, even the sizes are different. So men's brains, I think they're a bit bigger. I think 10% more bigger. And there's always just like
Don't say
running
that
joke
too
of just
loud.
like men. Mhm. It's a running joke of just like men have to do the same things as women. They need a bit more brain power, brain energy, essentially. And we can do
That's
the same
funny.
thing of less. Men and women too. There's also the difference between gray and white matter. So the gray matter of the brain are the cell bodies. So these are the things that hold information, and then the white matter of the brain are the cell connections. And women's brains actually have more of the white matter. So we can actually access different areas and parts of our brains faster and better than men can. Which is why women, it's easier for us to be in tune and empathetic, versus like for men, they really have to work hard at
Okay.
these things. And this is because biologically, right, women were meant to have offspring and babies, and so we need to be in tune to a baby's needs. So
Yes.
because of that, there are those brain changes. And then also with our cycle, we literally have brain changes throughout our cycle. So even when we look at our 28-day average cycle, our brain is different during these parts of the cycle. Like the later half of our cycle, our amygdala is more sensitive to negative stimuli.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, yeah, we have very, very real brain changes and differences. Versus men, they run on a 24-hour hormone cycle, so they don't have as significant brain changes. Yeah,
That's very
it's
interesting.
wild.
I need to read that book. Okay, but that's good to
It's
know.
a
And because I've noticed it, especially as adults, obviously you notice it, but I think we've been raised with so many bad habits on how to be, and men should do this, women
yes.
should do that. That now that I've got a boy and a girl who's quite close in age, because there's only a 19-month age gap between my kids,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can see the difference in brain development, like emotional. It's crazy because I assume she covers kids in her book as well. So
Exactly. So we actually learn, and then when I look back, I was like, "Oh my god, that makes so much sense why I was like this." But she covers like actually from like birth to when you're an adult, and she
mm.
goes through that with women, and then she does that with in the male brain book as well.
Oh, so I'm definitely reading those books because I feel like everyone that has kids need to read those books, because sometimes I look at my kids and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on, why this is happening now. I need some
Yeah,
help.
yeah,
You also
100%.
mentioned the 6 pillars of brain health, which are B vitamins,
Yes.
omega-3 fatty acids, magnesium, iron, zinc, and amino acids. Um, so there, obviously, you can get a lot of that through food. So my question to you is, what are the 3 foods that you would take on a deserted island with you?
Good question. So those are, I wouldn't say those are the 6 pillars of brain health, but those are important nutrients and vitamins for brain health.
Okay.
Because the 6 pillars are a little bit different than that in terms of what is for great brain health. Um, Good question. What are 3? Oh my God, foods I would take with me to a deserted island. Wow.
Because like I saw like the one that pops up quite regularly with all of that was and it's something I eat quite regularly. Pumpkin seeds, but you can't live off of pumpkin seeds. But I mean, obviously a meat of some sort.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know what I'm thinking of the meat? Like I'm just like, can I just hunt? Because I mean, I would love to take some sort of like fish or something, but I'm like, I'm at an island, so maybe I can just hunt fish, you know?
Yes, you can catch
Can
your
I
own
hunt at this
fish.
island? Is that allowed?
Well, what's that saying? Give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. So yes, you can fish on that
Yeah.
island. So you can
Yeah.
bring
Okay.
three
Okay.
added to
Perfect.
your. Let's hope there's unlimited supply of fish on this island.
Yeah. I feel like I would bring blueberries. Blueberries. Berries are just so good for us. So good for us. Some sort of like leafy green, for sure.
Okay.
Um, like a spinach or a kale. I think maybe I'd bring
Okay.
kale. And I mean, there's fish at this island, so I got the meat covered. I mean, a chicken would be great though too, because I could get some eggs from a chicken, and then I could also
Yes.
like eat the chicken too. So maybe I'd do that.
Oh, that's a double
And
whammy.
get some protein there with that,
That's a win-win.
and then that
But
got the healthy
seeing as
fats there too.
so I mixed up the pillars of brain health. So what are the 6 pillars of brain health then? if you can
Yes.
run
So the
through
six
them
pillars
with
are,
us quickly.
yeah. So mindset, nervous system regulation, diet, movement, sleep, and supplements.
Okay.
The six pillars of great
Which
brain health.
are 6 very important ones, and I'm trying to see if I've got most of them waxed. I think so. I actually, you'll be very proud of me. I we are very blessed here in because I live in Mauritius, so I managed to
So
come
beautiful.
across. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm so lucky. But we are very lucky that we've got our doctor and he comes to our house. And he's young.
Wow.
He's in his late 20s, early 30s. And
Yep.
his first approach, especially with me with 2 small kids, he wants to do the natural route first, always when treating us.
I love
And
that.
I had burnout about a year and a half, 2 years ago, end of
Yeah.
2023. And he didn't put me on anything. He said,
Yeah.
rest, like stop teaching, like wait, go cold turkey with teaching. Like I want you doing nothing for at least 3 months. Like rest, focus on you. He put me on ashwagandha and
Wow.
he put me on vitamin B and
Yep.
he came to do monthly vitamin drips for me at home, which was incredible. So I was just in
Wow.
my bed and he would
Yeah.
just do monthly vitamin drips for me.
Yeah.
And it was like 3 months and I was like a new person. So, and like I said
Wow.
to you before, I'm very in tune with my body. And about 2 months ago, I was like, I can't do with this brain fog, fatigue, and grumpiness anymore. And I told my nutritionist, before I now go to do all these tests on my hormones and stuff, because I know my hormones are completely shattered thanks to the Mirena
Yeah.
I've got in. So I know that.
Yeah.
So I
Yes.
just started taking vitamin D, magnesium, vitamin B, and ashwagandha again religiously every day.
Yep.
And I did my blood test
Yeah.
this morning, and they came back like perfect, my vitamin D, B, and
Yeah.
magnesium levels. And I was like,
Yeah.
yes,
That's amazing. And it's wild too, right? It's
crazy.
like it can be that simple to just make sure your body's getting a couple of these like important nutrients and making sure that you have something else that's supporting the stress piece of things. Like it really can be that simple. And I constantly tell all my patients, I'm like, it's actually really simple to have great brain health and to maintain great health long term. And we don't
Yes.
have to make it as hard as these like wild morning routines and all of these things. It's just the simple things done over like a period of time can make a big difference.
And
Yeah.
then obviously the 6 pillars, you don't mean we can never have little treats like chocolate because I'm a big sweet tooth.
Of 100%. I love pizza. I have weekly pizza night. I can't not. I love it. We've had that since I was a child. Like Friday nights were always pizza. And like by the time Friday, Saturday roll around, I'm like, I need my like pizza slice right
Meat.
now. So for sure, I'm a huge fan, like for always for that moderation piece of things. And I always say that when you actually eat healthy 80 to 90% of the time, your body becomes something called metabolically flexible. So this means that you can have a meal once a week that is like delicious and yummy
Okay.
and whatever you want it to be, and it doesn't take your body weeks to recover from it because your body is metabolically flexible. And so I think that's the key to remember is of course everything in moderation. And as
Yes.
long as 80 to 90% of the time you are eating well, you can truly enjoy the rest 10 to 20%, and it doesn't have to affect your body negatively.
Yes. I 100% agree with that. Like at this point, my frustration level sometimes with my small kids, I'm like, you guys just please have a broccoli or something. And they're like, they're 4 and 5. They're like, what is that
Yeah.
tree that you're putting on my plate? No, thank you. But in my mind, I'm like, if I can give my kids, if they get one healthy meal in for the day, then I'm okay
Yeah.
with them having their Milo cereal, which I know is very bad. Don't come for me. But obviously, in
It-
Mauritius, we eat a lot of rice, a lot of lentils. Like we eat lentils, I think 4 times a week, at least my kids.
It's
They
amazing. Lentils
love
are great.
red. Yes, and they
Yeah.
love red kidney beans. My kids are happy. If you give them rice and red kidney beans for dinner, they're like, I'm waxed. I'm happy, which is very strange, a very weird palate for a 4 and 5-year-old, red kidney beans.
Yeah.
So no, I am, and that's what I say. And I also tell them rather have one sweet treat a day than eating that whole box of biscuits on Sunday for your one cheat meal a week. I hate that saying. If you do it, I'm so sorry, but I'm against it. because I like just binge then all of a sudden because I'm like withdrawal symptoms to
Yeah.
like insanely. So
Yeah.
firm believer in the 80%, 80, 90%. Just moderation is key 100% to me. Um, what's your go-to book recommendation? Because you love to read and I love to read. What's your go-to book recommendation to your patients and
Yeah.
personally?
Yeah. Wow. That's a tough one. Because honestly, my recommendations can differ so much based on just
The
what
person.
someone needs. Yeah, the person and what they really need support with. So it's hard to say that I have like a specific go-to. There are a couple that, The Power of the Female Brain by Dr. Daniel Amen. I like that book because it's very much um it just gives insight into, like, I work with a lot of women in my practice, and it just gives insight into like the female brain, um and how it works, and just natural ways to like support the female brain. The Universe Has Your Back is another one I recommend to patients, but this is more so, again, we're kind of getting into like faith and trusting and mindset and
Okay.
spirituality work, and I do a lot of that stuff with my patients as well, so that can definitely be a go-to. And there's another one on the label. Yes. So a naturopathic
Okay.
doctor, she's based out of Alberta, Dr. Christina Bjorndal. She has a really fantastic book called Beyond the Label, and she actually, talks openly about her her journey with like bipolar disorder and how that led her to naturopathic medicine. And she
Wow.
focuses solely on mental health in her practice. And so this is very much a great holistic book on how to support your mental health, brain health in a very natural, like holistic
Okay.
way. So that book is definitely really great as well. Now, my personal go-to book, honestly, I have been diving deep into like the spiritual manifestation world. Like, that's just the era of my life that I'm at right now.
Mm.
Um, and Neville Goddard. Do you know? Are you familiar with Neville Goddard?
No.
No? Okay. He's like the father of manifestation, basically. And he's written like 14 books, but there's like a collection of all his books in one.
Wow.
And it is like my absolute favorite thing I've literally read in my whole entire life. And it's phenomenal. He basically takes teachings from the Bible, and I'm not even like Christian, I don't even read the Bible, but he just takes teachings from the Bible, and he applies all the manifestation techniques, and he basically just talks about how it's almost like our God-given right to be able to bring in whatever we want into our life. And that's how powerful of
Wow.
beings we are. And so yeah, whenever I need like a little zhuzh, a little boost in my life, I'm just like, I read a couple of pages from that book, and it's just so powerful. So that's kind of the era of life that I'm in right now. And so those are kind of the books that I vein like
Okay.
more towards, like that subconscious rewiring, manifestation, self-talk stuff. So yeah, that's kind of been my go-to book. A phenomenal read. Yeah.
That sounds like a great book to gift a friend.
Mhm. Mhm. So good.
Oh. Then
Yeah.
there's a question I ask all the guests. If you
Okay.
can please share your 3 timeless tips with everyone listening.
Yeah. 3
Any
timeless
tips?
tips. So number 1, yeah, your self-talk is everything. Your self-talk determines your reality. Big one. Um, if you want to achieve anything in life, you have to make sure the vessel that you house your mind in is healthy, truly. And don't
Hmm.
underestimate the importance of taking care of the vessel that is your body. And when you do that, you
Yes.
unlock your potential. Big one. And then honestly, the last tip would be like just moving forward with like faith and certainty, because everything truly does work out in the best way always. And to employ more of that
Amen.
faith in your life on a daily basis, because it really does always work out. And we stress too much without needing to.
We do. That's so true. And we forget that we lose faith and we lose focus when we go through difficult times. So it's normal. But
Yeah.
it's true. Everything does always work out at the end of the day, some way or another. It
Always.
does. I don't know why or how, but it
Always.
just does.
It always
Then,
does.
last question. Are you more of a
Yeah.
sunset or sunrise person?
Oh, sunrise. Sunrise. Easy.
Okay.
I
So,
love waking up 5, 6 a.m. It's just, yeah, I love it so much. Yeah.
so if you can go on a sunrise walk with anyone in nature,
Yeah.
who would it be?
Who would I want to walk with in the sunrise? I mean, if Neville Goddard was alive, I'd love to talk to him.
Well, you can. It can be dead or alive, so you can choose
Yeah,
whoever.
Neville Goddard, let's go. Sunrise walk. I feel like that would be the most powerful day of my life. Like,
Yes, like imagine what you'll achieve and accomplish after that.
seriously. Yeah. So,
Oh,
yeah, that's definitely who I'd go for a walk with.
but Dr. Bisleen, thank you so much. I loved chatting to you, and thank you for making me cry and blow my mind and everything all in one chat. It was incredible, and keep doing what you're doing. You are beautiful inside out, and just please just sharing your knowledge, your love, and your passion for what you're doing. You are truly wow.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And it was great to just really talk about grief and just the impact on the brain and ways that people don't always realize and understand. And also to
Yes.
just talk about strategies to work through it. So thanks for that.